So I'm going to start working on the engine on this. We're going to start off by pulling the hood off and getting it put to the back. Because if you're working on it, it folds up and it's still kind of in the way. So if I can take it clear off, that way it won't be in the way, that'll be even better. So let's get it started. It's a pretty simple engine. So right there, that's the cam gear cover. The cam goes down underneath the block here. The distributor cap is right in the middle, comes out, and it goes to all the spark plugs. And this is a vacuum, so it can adjust timing. And your carburetor, single barrel, your intake, and this is your exhaust manifold. They're kind of connected so that heat will come up and make it run better during startup. And there's a little thermostat right there that I would guess does not work correctly. That will shut off more contact and reduce the heat coming into the intake. But that's where the oil pump is, or manifold, everything. Not a whole lot to it. All right, so this is the front of the engine. So it's always cylinder one at the front. These are the push rods. Down underneath here is the cam followers and cam and everything. Like I said, it's down in here. And these get pushed on, and they push on the rocker arms. And the rocker arms push on the valves. They're supposed to be perfectly straight. So when you turn them like that, you might get a little walk, but for for the most part, they'll turn exactly straight. And if you lay them on the table, you can see if they're straight or not. So in this case, this one is exhaust, this one is intake, this one is intake for cylinder 2, and this one is exhaust for cylinder 2. So that is a problem. Clearly, big problem. This is so this is the exhaust. This one is exhaust for cylinder 3. Intake. This is actually an oil passage. You can see where it drips down. It takes it back to the pan. So this is all the push tubes, and see how that one I can't spin with my fingers like I can with that one? That's because this one is being pushed on and it's opening that valve. So I can't turn that one right now. Now if I were to bar the engine over a little bit, it would come off of the lobe of the cam and you could turn it. But we noticed that plate that I took off kind of doing a little jump when I was barring it over. So I wanted to, by we, I mean me and my dad. I wanted to get it somewhere where I can look at these and do something about them. So the next thing I think I'm going to do is I think I'm going to have somebody bar this engine over for me so I can watch that. I want to see that that rotates 1 full revolution for every 2 times you crank it over with the barring tool, because your cam spins a half a revolution for every time your crank spins. All right, I'm going to start working on the carburetor, trying to get some fuel system stuff figured out. So we get some progress on this thing. I'd like to get as much progress as fast as possible as I can. So we're going to start with taking this little wing nut off the top. And get the air filter off and go from there. So this little line was on the back side of the carburetor, and it goes down and around to the distributor cap. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a vacuum gun and put vacuum on that. See, it goes down and around and goes to the distributor right here. And as I see that little bit of movement, that's how it advances the timing for how much throttle you're giving it. So as the engine's running, without any throttle, your vacuum is really high. So it will pull a vacuum on that, and it will change the timing. But as you speed up, your timing needs to change because the flame front travels at the same speed, and you want it to hit the piston at the same point, so you have to start the flame front earlier. So as I put vacuum on it, on this over here, you can see that move. See it? And then when I let off, it goes. So that tells me that line is still in good shape. So now I'm going to take that carburetor over to the bench over there. This place is a mess. Again, not a surprise, it's kind of small for what I'm doing. But I'll take that over to the bench and get it all tore down and make sure everything's clean inside. And then the next thing is getting the fuel pump, because there's three things an engine needs to run: air, fuel, and ignition. And in a gas engine, ignition is spark. In a diesel engine, ignition is the temperature created by compression. All right, to be honest with you, I do not know anything about this type of carburetor. What I know about carburetors is they're going to have a fuel bowl, which I imagine is what this is. And inside that fuel bowl, they'll have something that floats. And on that float, we'll have a needle that shuts the fuel off going into the fuel bowl. When it gets full enough. And then as you're running and driving, it pulls the fuel in. And I'll get into that in a minute. And that's what drains it out, and that's why that floats in there. So it drains out, and then once it gets to that point, it'll open up and give it more fuel. So it's never low on fuel for what it needs. Now, how it works is there's a valve in the bottom that's spring-loaded closed. That is your throttle valve. So as you hit the throttle, it opens up and allows more air to flow through. And that's where this vacuum to the distributor was on this side of the fuel, or that throttle valve, the engine side. So as the engine's running, trying to suck that air in, it pulls a little bit of that, it pulls a vacuum on this line, and that's what turns the distributor at an idle. And then when you open the throttle, that distributor will turn depending on how much vacuum is there, and it will advance the timing as you give it throttle. And then carbureted engines don't like to run when they're cold. So this valve on top is the choke. So So when it's cold, you can choke it, and what that does is it creates more vacuum higher up on the carburetor, and it will pull fuel out of the fuel bowl at a higher rate, which will let it start easier and run better at a cold. And as it warms up, it will you can open the choke and it will run just fine. So what I want to do is I want to make sure all this surface gets clean, which it looks really clean the way it is, which is impressive. And then I want to pull the fuel bowl apart and make sure that it gets all cleaned out, because I'm sure the fuel that was in it last is not great. And that should really take care of everything that's in this carburetor, because it's such a simple setup. So we'll start by taking this screw out. And that's just a cover, looks like, for all of this. So before you start it, you can hit the throttle a couple times and it will pump fuel into the intake. So there's already fuel in the intake for when it fires. And it looks like that's what this lever is for. Goes up and goes to here and it pumps that. Looks like this plate hits here on this part of the carburetor. So we'll have to pull this top section off. Something like this, you just got to be gentle and just watch stuff. Yeah, it looks like there's some stuff in there that I'd like to be able to get out before we put some actual fuel in it. These screws are kind of what helps the fuel flow through everything, and it meters it. So you really don't want to go messing too far without marking this kind of stuff. And to be honest with you, I don't want to mess with that stuff at all. I just want to make sure that all that stuff in this bowl gets cleaned out. So I think that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna get a paper towel and clean this out with brake clean. And then this little brass piece is the float that's inside the bowl that I was talking about. It's hollow, full of air. So as this tub fills up with fuel, that goes from here and it floats. And down inside there, there's a little needle. So as it goes up, it pushes that needle up into place. So the carburetor is tore down on the bench over there. The fuel line comes up from the fuel pump, which is right there, which I got to check out yet. And the only other thing in the whole fuel system is the fuel tank. Well, I went to open it to see how full it was and broke the fill cap. It didn't want to come loose. So it made a hole in it. So I used a long piece, I think it's a battery hold down, and put it through the hole to see how full the tank was. And it's about half full, and about an inch at the bottom of this tank is full of rust. I would guess is what it is, dirt, whatever, but it's in this tank. So I think and with the hole, the old gas fumes comes out a little bit, and you can smell it in the garage every time I come out here. So it sits above the frame rail on this truck, and it's in this like wooden structure. So I'm guessing you have to take it out the top to remove it. So that's what I'm going to work on. I'm going to try to get it outside and try to get something figured out where I can get it emptied and see how bad it really is inside of it. I might have to get a new gas tank, but I'll show you taking it out. So we'll start off with removing this center strap. Take some screws, and it should come right off. All right, so from the bottom side, you can get the bolts off that hold the straps on. My goodness. So the only other things holding that to the rest of the truck is the fuel gauge that's right here. So a simple one wire sensor. Tuck it out of the way. And then the fuel line that's on the bottom, which may be a little rough to change. All right, let's see how bad this is gonna go. Fuel line is off and it started to drip. Well, I got that wrestled out of there. More stuff. There's something interesting. So this is the fuel line that comes up. This side of the fuel tank mounting is hard to the frame. This side pivots. It's like they knew that this frame was going to flex a little bit, and they made sure it wasn't going to try to twist that fuel tank into. But now I can check the line that goes up through to the fuel pump, make sure it flows. And take that fuel pump off and check it and get it cleaned out. So this fuel pump is kind of like the old Chevy 350. It's got a pump or a in and out, and it goes up to the carburetor. It's got 2 bolts that hold it to the side of the block. So we'll take those 2 bolts off. Make sure it's fairly clean above that. It's kind of hard to see in here. Let me grab the light. So there's a lobe that this rests on, and every time the high part of the lobe comes around, it pushes on that, and that's what'll push on that in here, and that will take fuel through here and up and through onto the car. And there's even a little bowl in there for a filter kind of deal. So I'll take that over to the bench and do some inspecting on that. So there's a screen there. Look at all that build up. So fuel goes in there, and it comes out that center port, and it's just gravity fed. So the tank is higher than this port, and it just feeds the fuel into here, where this bowl will fill up, and it's just a glass bowl, and you can see through it. So when you get like bad fuel, you'll get water or debris in the bottom of this bowl, and you'll be able to change it out. So you'll be able to clean it. And then the top side, there's a screen to catch all the little particulate before it goes into the pump. I like to get this bowl cleaned better. And inside this pump, there's a diaphragm. And some check valves. So one is before the check valve and one is after. So as the diaphragm opens up, it sucks the fuel in from the one before, the check valve before it. And then as the diaphragm closes, that check valve won't allow it to flow back towards the fuel tank, and the other check valve allows it to flow towards the carburetor. And once it flows towards the carburetor, and that diaphragm loses its stroke, it can't flow back into it. So it goes in there and it can't come back out, but it gets pushed out. And once it's over here, it can't go back in here. So the fuel that's over here has to come back in here. And that's how a fuel pump works. It pumps the fuel. So there it is. So as this it would suck it in into this section. It would flow in through this one. And then after it sucks it in, it goes back up and pushes it out. And it won't go through this one the way it's designed, but it will go through this one and up to the carburetor. All right, there's the fuel pump, all tore down. And there's the carb all tore down. So I'm going to have to figure out the next thing I'm going to do is I'm probably going to have to do some research off camera and do some digging into this fuel tank that is in the truck, because I believe that at this time there may not be a way to save that fuel tank, because of its condition. It is in very bad shape, unfortunately. But here, I'll just show you. So just looking at it it's not that bad, but this this is the outlet of the fuel tank. It's so bad inside of it that I can't close this. I can't open it. That's about as far as I can turn it. And it's plugged up. I can't get the fill cap out because it's seized in there. And then there are holes in it in places. I believe there's a pinhole here-ish. And some other things that I noticed popping up. So what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to try to extract this. I'm going to have to look inside of it and see how much of it's rust and all that stuff. And see if I can get it cleaned. See what I can use. But this fuel tank is in really bad shape. So I really don't want to have to go out and get a new one and try to find one that works, because a lot of them will come with an additional spout that will make it come out of the cab for a fill, which is not feasible for this truck, because that means I've got to come up with piping and cut a hole in the body somewhere. I just don't want to do that. I really want to try to make this work. So I think I'm gonna try and get this to come out, this fill plug to come out, and that way I can clean out the tank and then fill it with water and figure out where all my leaks are. And then maybe weld them closed, which is crazy to think that I'm gonna weld on a gas tank. But there's a couple things to keep in mind. I'm gonna have it filled with water to find the leaks. And two, this gas is so old that it's bad. And then after I get the fuel system all figured out, I've got to figure out the next system I'm working on this engine. Whether it be cooling system, timing, spark, oil, electrical. I'm not really sure where I'm going next, but I do know I need to get that radiator out. I know I need to work on the valves. I know I have to find a new point and condenser, and plugs, wires, cap, rotor. So there's a lot that I need to do on this truck yet. So stay tuned, and you know, we'll go through this truck one piece at a time, one kind of system, I guess you could say, at a time. So you guys can see, because this truck it's as simple as it gets. And it's in rough shape, so it needs a lot of work. That you can see that it's not hard to do, it's just time consuming. So don't be afraid to work on your own stuff. But for now, that's all I've got for you. Please give me a like, comment, subscribe, and thanks for watching. Bye.